What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So we have a few stories that we're going to cover off on today in the horror news update. Two of the articles, though, ironically have to do with Zach. So as you see from this first one here that we're just going to jump right into, Zach compares his Abrams-Led Resident Evil movie to Evil Dead 2. Now that's quite the comparison. I know there's mad love for the Evil Dead franchise, the IP, especially the original films. I'm not sure if the same amount of love transferred over to the remake, as far as Evil Dead. But let's jump into this one because we also know, and we've covered this already, we've said this before, not just when it comes to video game adaptations that we tried to put into live action, but Zach has already come out and said for his Resident Evil movie, he's going to try to bring back the horror aspect from the video games, but he's not going to retell a story from the video games. So like Leon, for example, he's said previously, unless something has changed, and unless it's changed in this article update, he's pretty much mentioned, hey, that story has been told in the video games. I don't need to tell that story again. I'm going to tell my own story. So while he's going, and that, I don't want to say that worries me, but it makes me wonder how far off the path he's going to go to then just say, I'm using the name Resident Evil, but this really isn't a Resident Evil, film, so to speak, right? And I've said this before, where directors, writers, creators, whatever, when it comes to video games, they start to cherry pick from video games, and then it just feels like you're only using the name, and this has nothing to do with the video game IP. So let's get into this one. Like I said, this is going to be a pretty quick video today because we only have a few stories. So let's jump into it. Up next from Zach Cregger is a fresh new take on the Resident Evil film franchise with an untitled movie that will be the filmmaker's follow-up to Weapons, which just raised his horror credibility even further. So I haven't seen Weapons yet. I've heard nothing but good things about Weapons. I know it absolutely killed it at the box office on its first weekend, which I think was this past weekend. Especially even the Thursday numbers were really high. And my understanding is this is one of the highest, again, from an original story perspective for horror, it's one of those highest ones as far as bringing the dollars in. So that's good news, not just for Zach, but I think that's good news for the horror genre. Because again, we started off the year coming in to 2025 with a lot of horror movies coming out in theaters, and a lot of them either didn't live up to the expectations that were being set forth, or they just had massive second weekend drops. I mean, we saw some as big as 80% or higher, and then by the third, fourth week, they were already pulled out of theaters. And then I think on one of them, by between week 4 and 5, it was already on digital and VOD. So I questioned, and you can go back to some of the videos that we did back in January, February. I questioned then, is this something that's just happening to horror, or is this like a broad stroke as far as other blockbuster films? It seems to be happening more and more. Films aren't staying in theaters that long. So again, Weapons, I've heard nothing but good things. I plan on seeing that one once I can, but yeah, looking forward to seeing that. Cregger has teased that his Resident Evil movie won't be shackled by the video game franchise's lore, and we've got more teases this week. Zach's Resident Evil will be the 8th live-action movie based on the hit video game, but Cregger admits in a chat with Ringer Movies that he's never actually seen any of the previous movies. His vision for Resident Evil, it seems, is going to be quite original. Cregger tells Ringer, quote, it's gonna be not at all like Barbarian and Weapons. It's going to be a rock'em sock'em. It's for me to play and turn my brain off and just make an Evil Dead 2 get crazy with the camera. Austin Abrams is going to be my guy. It's a weird, fun, wild story. The quote goes on to say, this movie follows a person from point A to point B. It's like a real-time journey where you just go deeper and deeper into the depths of hell. And it's really a love letter to the games because I love those games. This is a story that I would have wanted to write whether I got the IP or not. I just happen to be able to have these Resident Evil people be down. So I get to play in that sandbox. I'm doing it because I think this movie is going to be awesome. So let's pause there for a moment. So again, he brings up the comparison to Evil Dead 2. Austin Abrams is going to be he's calling him out, say, hey, this is going to be my guy for this film. I am glad to hear it's not going to be anything like Barbarian or Weapons. Again, having not seen Weapons, but as him being a filmmaker, recognizing the fact that I don't want it to feel like you're just watching a continuation or a rinse and repeat of work I've already done. I want to do something completely different. Now, the one thing though that as I was mentioning at the beginning of this video, that again doesn't bother me, maybe worries me, but as he goes on to say, this is a story that I would have wanted to write whether I got the IP or not. I just happened to be able to have these Resident Evil people be down. So he had the story already. He pretty much had the story already done. It was whether or not were we going to call it Resident Evil or not, or were we going to kind of tie in Resident Evil stuff, which that worries me. As I mentioned, so he's already down this path of he has an idea, he has a story he wants to tell, and now are we just going to cherry pick and use the name Resident Evil to say, oh, this has to do with the Resident Evil franchise of previous movies and video games, when it clearly is being said here that it doesn't seem like it was ever intended to be that. So are you trying to put a square peg in a round hole here where it's going to feel like that? It's going to feel disjointed when it's all said and done. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't really even feel like a Resident Evil film. This just feels like either an original story horror film, and they're just calling it Resident Evil. So, all right, let's continue on. What does Cregger mean by that? Well, he recently told SFX magazine that this movie will not be completely obedient to the lore of the games, but rather he's trying to tell a story that just feels authentic to the experience you get when you play the games. And he tells Inverse in a separate chat that the movie won't feature any characters from the Resident Evil games. We're going deeper now down the rabbit hole. Exactly what I was just saying. The worry and concern could be is this just called Resident Evil in name, but has really nothing to do with the games itself. The quote here, another quote. Let me say this. This is not breaking the rules of the games. I am the biggest worshiper of the game, so I'm telling a story that is a love letter to the games and follows the rules of the games. Cregger continues in the same chat, I'm not going to tell Leon's story because Leon's story is told. Okay, so this is exactly what I had said at the beginning. I had heard this before, I had heard this quote before, so he's just reaffirming the fact that he's not going to be telling that same story. But as this article went on to read from the previous quotes, we kind of got that perspective already. He's not really going to be using the games. After 7 live-action movies and short-lived Netflix television series, Constantine Films and PlayStation Productions are bringing Resident Evil back to the big screen with Cregger writing and directing, and that's going to be coming September 18th, 2026, and that's the end of this article. So yeah, we're just a little over a year and a month away before this hits. Now, we obviously aren't going to get any teasers, trailers, anything like that, so I'm guessing probably after the first quarter of next year, probably around summertime. I wouldn't be surprised if the first full trailer for this hits for ahead of a big blockbuster in theaters. That'll probably be the first time it'll pop up. So that's the latest for Zach's new Resident Evil movie that's going to be coming out next year. All right, so let's move on to the next story. A24 acquires slow-burning liminal horror, The Undertone, starring Nina Kiri. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. All right, so let's jump into this one. I don't have any background on this film called The Undertone. I don't have any details on this, so this is going to be the first time I'm hearing of this particular film, outside of a lot of the other things A24 has been trying to acquire. So. A24 has acquired the worldwide rights to The Undertone, a slow burn liminal horror film from Canada. Deadline reports that a competitive bidding situation ensued following a splashy premiere at the Fantasia Film Festival last month, resulting in a mid-7-figure deal. So, that could be why. That film, as it says, that film festival was just last month, and maybe that's now this news is starting to come out about some of the films that were premiered there. I've said this before, we saw something very similar with SXSW from earlier this year in March. We knew of some movies that were going to be premiered going into that festival, and then once that was over, it was just like an onslaught of news on various films we had not heard about and trailers. So I did look because with this one being premiered last month, I thought there might have been a trailer already out there for it. I couldn't find one. So unless they snuck one into this article that I don't know about, I did try Googling to see if there was even a teaser. And again, I couldn't find anything. Paranormal podcast host, Evie, moves into her dying mother's house to be her primary caregiver when she receives audio recordings of a young pregnant couple experiencing supernatural noises. She realizes the woman's story mirrors her own. Each new recording scratches at her sanity, drawing her into a fate she cannot escape. All right, so we go on writer director, who's all starring in it. Let's keep going. Dan Slater from Slaterverse Pictures and Cody Callahan from Black Fawn Films produce. Okay, so we just have more names, more who's all involved in producing it. So let's keep going. Nothing, again, more names, directors, nothing more about the movie. Let's see here. We have a brief review from when it was premiered at Fantasia. This individual, Joe Lipset, is saying, I can't remember the last time a movie made every hair on my body stand up, but the Undertone got me good. Okay, that's one person's perspective. So we do have a poster here. All right, I do like the poster. I like the poster right up until we get here. All of this down here. Get rid of all of this down here, and then maybe put the Fantasia and just bump everything down. Right, bump the title down. I'd understand maybe why you'd want this Fantasia official selection there, to highlight the fact that it did premiere there. But maybe bump it down a bit. Be afraid of the silence, and then we have what appears to be that podcaster main character. But I'm glad they didn't put a bunch of text up here around her or on her image. That it's all down below, so that's good. But overall, again, I don't like all this credit stuff down here. I would just assume just get rid of all that. All right, and we have no more to this. So we have no date as to when A24 might be thinking about maybe putting this in theaters, whether that's a limited run, maybe VOD digital in the same day, or if it's just going to go right to a streaming platform. So nothing on that yet. And as you saw, there was no trailer attached to this. So hopefully we'll even get a trailer sometime soon in the next month or two. But yeah, that's the latest. A24 has acquired the rights for the Undertone, and that's worldwide rights. Keep that in mind. So maybe they'll just do a worldwide release, but that doesn't typically happen. Usually they break it out in various regions. So, all right. So the last story, we're jumping right back to Zach Cregger, talking about Barbarian, and I think this is as you read this headline, it states, quote, "It bums me out." Zach talks about the lack of physical media release for Barbarian. Yeah, that bums me out too. I think that's pretty unfortunate that this film still hasn't gotten its just desserts, so to speak. So let's jump into this one. I can't imagine if you're a horror fan that you haven't seen Barbarian. I know I believe it's on Shudder. And it could, let me check. I think it's on Shudder. I have my platforms up, but I'm pretty sure it might even be on Hulu as well. Let's see, Barbarian. So it's actually I think it is on. Let's go back and check. Let's see here, Barbarian. All right, so it looks like it pops up. Yeah, okay, so depending upon what type of subscription you have, you can get it on Hulu. So again, I can't imagine many people haven't seen this film if you are a horror fan, but I do know there's a wide audience of people like myself who do enjoy having physical media, right? I mean, I know a lot of people are just okay with having digital versions, downloadable versions, but keep in mind you don't own those versions. At any point, whoever you purchased it from can easily pull it and take it away from you. At least with physical media, you have the physical copy. So sometimes, if it's a movie you really like, if you can and the price is right, I would suggest buying 2 copies because you never know when that first one might wear out. You scratch it, gets damaged. At least then you have something to fall back on. Because when some of these physical releases go out of print, 1, they're hard to find, and 2, if you do find them, they cost quite a bit of money. I know there's been a few films that I've wanted to get, only to find out that they are out of print, and depending upon how badly I wanted it in my collection, I just bit the bullet and purchased it. So, all right, let's jump into this one, and we're gonna wrap this video up. It was released in theaters 3 years ago, made $45 million at the box office, and launched Zach's filmmaking career. But Barbarian still hasn't been released on Blu-ray. Collectors of physical media have been begging for 20th Century Studios to bring Barbarian to Blu-ray for the past 3 years. And Cregger reveals in a new interview with Ringer Movies that he's been beating the same drum this whole time. Quote, "I have banged the drum, made phone calls, and tried my best to get some sort of physical media. I'm not making headway, and it kind of bums me out. I love watching the making of, sometimes as much as watching the movie. Selfishly, I want people to watch me boss other people around and look cool. We don't have any footage like that of Barbarian because nobody cared enough, but we did do special features. They're available on the iTunes purchase." So yeah, I mean, that right there, that's what I'm talking about. You can go buy this on iTunes and you can access and watch these special features, but at any point Apple can say, yeah, we're pulling this down, and you may lose access to that copy of Barbarian, and now you no longer have it. And then it's a matter of, okay, well, where else can you either purchase it now again, rent it, or stream it? And I just think it's unfortunate that a lot of physical media has been going by the wayside for digital copy. But in my opinion, there's been I think there's starting to be a resurgence of physical media. I think the demand is starting to come back around. I think we go in these cycles because even things like vinyl records, I've been collecting vinyl records for years now. And when I first started, vinyl was starting to make a little bit of a comeback. Wasn't that big, but then as the years have gone on, vinyl has becoming more and more of a comeback, more of a thing people want. Now, CDs aren't quite there yet. I do know when sometimes newer soundtracks get released on vinyl, sometimes they'll do a limited run of CDs. Now, I can say cassette tapes are very far and few between when they get released, very limited runs. 8-track, I can't even remember the last time anything was ever released on an 8-track, but you never know when that might come back around. All right, let's continue on. Let's wrap this one up. You can indeed find a featurette and deleted scenes for Barbarian on digital, but there's up to this point been no mention of any plans to bring the film to physical. This despite Barbarian being a huge hit with a massive fan base of horror fans begging for it, and Cregger's second movie Weapons topping. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about earlier in the video. I'd heard when I heard Weapons did very well, 70 million this past weekend. I mean, that's great. I'm glad to see that. But what will be interesting is this upcoming weekend for that second weekend drop. How big is the drop going to be? All right, so let's continue. I think this. So this is a link right here. So I'll put the link for this article in the description of the video. So this video here, I did do a time check on it. It's about an hour and a half. We're not gonna dive into this interview for the next hour and a half, but you can access it where Zach talks about the lack of physical media release for Barbarian. So if you wanted to hear it right from him, you can do so in this video. And then we have the poster, which we've all seen for Barbarian at some point. So, all right, yep. So that's going to do it for this update. Yep, Barbarian still hasn't gotten that Blu-ray physical release, even though Zach is also out there trying to lead the charge to have it happen, but no luck as of yet. Hopefully that will change. Hopefully we'll get news. Maybe maybe when they release Weapons, maybe if Weapons gets a physical release, maybe they'll say, hey, maybe now it's time to release Barbarian, or maybe they'll wait till Resident Evil and do like a package, like a Zach package deal where you get all 3 of his movies or something. So anyways, that's going to do it for this horror news update. Again, Barbarian, Zach is out there trying to get a physical release for it. A24 acquires the Undertone, and Zach talks about his Resident Evil movie and what his plans are for it. So drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think about any one of these stories. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Later.